Hi and welcome to the AnyLogic Modelers YouTube channel. Today I had the very special privilege of interviewing one of the true legends inside the AnyLogic community, Felipe Haro. Now, Felipe is a process improvement and simulation consultant and freelancer and the owner of Jaco-Ben Consulting. Today, Felipe and I discussed a bit about his background, how he got into simulation and how he became a simulation freelancing consultant. We also discussed machine learning and the novel way in which he used it in a recent project that he presented at the AnyLogic conference. We also touched on some of the differences between simulation modelers and software developers and the nuances of trying to model reality.
So hi Felipe and welcome to the AnyLogic Modeler YouTube channel. Unfortunately, Vitor couldn't make it today, but we are super excited to have you here. It's a privilege and an honor to have you here. You obviously don't know this, but you were one of the first people that actually inspired me to do simulation full-time. So back in, I think it was 2018, where you were interviewed by Benjamin and Jacob on the Broken Jars podcast, I was like, okay, this is really cool. What do you do? And Ben referred to you as one of the rare freelance simulation consultants back then. So I'm not sure how much the industry changed now. I think there's maybe a bit more people doing it full time. And then according to my knowledge in 2019, I think you were the first guy to have an online course on simulation modeling purely devoted to AnyLogic. So and I remember buying that course and doing a whole lot of it. So thank you so much. I think it's just fitting that you be the first person that we interview on this show. So tell us a bit more about how's life, how's business at the moment?
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be invited also. And we can talk a lot about this freelancing situation, how it began and how it is now, because that's kind of an interesting topic. And right now, things are extremely busy for me. It always goes like, you know, these kind of situations. But now I have a lot of things going on and I can barely keep my life together.
Yeah, I see you recently advertised the new position at your company. So I was assuming that, you know, there's a demand is exceeding the supply of your services at the moment.
Yeah, so the situation, like I started looking for someone a year ago when I was already overbooked. I generally work maybe 12 hours a day in average, and I sometimes use contractors to help me a little bit with some things. I tried to look for someone, and I never was able to fit anything. Like the people I liked, there were two people who I really liked, and there was like a political situation in terms of being in other countries that were, so we weren't able to actually make it happen. And others just ask for ridiculous amount of money. So it depends. Like actually, on the whole range I've been interviewing since I started looking for, the lowest salary that was asked was 300 euros per month, and the biggest was 20,000. So
wow.
For the same position, you have this ridiculous range in salary. So it's kind
but
of
obviously
crazy.
There's hopefully a difference in skills, experience, and expertise, right? So the guys don't just ask that amount of money and they all have the same level of experience.
So yeah, one thing is experience. The other one is where they come from. So these days, like the US salaries are kind of inflated a bit. So if you hire someone from the US, you will pay much more, no matter what. In particular, if they live in a place like New York or Silicon Valley or LA, San Diego, these places that are super expensive, it's impossible to live with less than 100,000 a year.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you hire someone from I don't want to say a country, but a country with lower cost of living, they obviously don't need this level of amount. These two people can save the same amount of money with very different levels of salary.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So do you think it's fair to pay different prices for the same skill set just based on where they're providing you the skills from?
I would say no. But you know, it depends, you know. Like, I don't want to get into these political conversations, but
yeah, no, me as well. So Philippe, so touching a bit on the freelance simulation, tell us a bit about your background, where it all started, how you got into simulation modeling, AnyLogic, and whatever else you want to cover.
Yeah, so I started using AnyLogic in 2013 when I was doing my master in system dynamics. So this is rare because system dynamics is less used in the AnyLogic world. But I did my master thesis using system dynamics in AnyLogic. And this was my first experience. And I started doing freelancing on the side while I was working in other jobs in 2015. I can even show you like my first project that I ever did. I was paid for it. It's so ridiculous. and in 2017, in 2016, I was working in Amazon, and I was doing these projects on the side, and also I was helping people in Amazon itself that were not in my team doing simulations, and I was like, maybe I can do this on my own, and I can have freedom, and I can travel the world while working, and that was kind of my objective. And so I started doing this and started traveling and doing AnyLogic projects to see if it works. And then I became a kind of this digital nomad that travels around the world and does simulation work. And we can talk about this freelancing situation because when I started in 2016 or even 2017, there was no freelancer at all. At least in the platforms that are today available, like Fiverr, Upwork, which are the most commonly used, there was no one. I was the only island there that would provide services related to AnyLogic.
Yeah, was this just AnyLogic, or was there other like simulation platforms that had freelancers, Simios, Arenas, FlexSim, etc.?
So I was offering at that point in Arena and AnyLogic and also Vensim, because those are the ones that I kind of manage best, like know best. In general, there was very little projects, but since I was the only one, all the projects came to me no matter what. So there was no competition at all. Even if I gave a higher price, like they will always come back after a month saying, okay, let's do this, because either it was me or you hire a big company that will be extremely more expensive. So there were no options. Like if you see nowadays, the number of freelancers related to AnyLogic in different platforms is significantly higher. If even the easiest way is just to go to Fiverr, you look for AnyLogic, and actually you see a lot of people. And so the marketplace has changed in that sense. Maybe this because there are more projects available, or maybe there are more people who do AnyLogic, or maybe it was the pandemic that made people want to work online more.
Yeah.
Or a combination of all these things. And actually, I saw you one time I saw you that you were like this in Fiverr or Upwork, something, and then you disappeared. I don't know. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it was also part of the pandemic. We were like, okay, maybe I need to prepare for something. But in the end, it didn't really work out. It was a lot of effort, a lot of people asking for stuff, and it didn't. I didn't do any projects in the end there.
Yeah. So, well, in Fiverr in particular, like the projects that come are based very, very low level. Like I have never done a big project there. It's always very small. But when it began, there were like 50 platforms. There are a lot more platforms than Upwork or Fiverr. There are many more. And I signed up to everything, so anything would come to me, no matter what.
And nowadays, people find you, it's mostly just word of mouth. You know, I mean, through the AnyLogic conference presentations, we've had so many leads and done so many projects through what we presented. What do you think is your main source of leads at the moment?
So in the first place, I do zero marketing for myself. I do very little now in these platforms, like these freelancing platforms. I do very little work, and people come to me from different places. One of them is people that did my course 2 years ago, went to a company, and now they know me, so they hire me. Or they just did my course to learn, and they say, it's too difficult, I will hire the teacher. Or they will come from word of mouth. Or sometimes I post a video and people hire me or invite me to something related to that. Or it's because also, if you look in Google for simulation modelers related to AnyLogic, I'm almost first. I think after AnyLogic, it's me. Nice. It depends on what country you're looking for, because I worked a lot on my SEO for my website, so I'm sure that I'm well positioned, and since my website has been there for so long, I'm there with with Mositex, and even be above Mositex and Simplan and all the big names there.
And something like Stack Overflow, I mean, we've hired a professional once through like the type of answers that they provided. And, we have a handful of people that, myself included, you, Ben, etc., that provides answers on Stack Overflow. And I always feel that's a good, representation of the kind of work that you do and the knowledge that you've got. Do you think you've gotten any leads through some answers that you've given on Stack Overflow as well?
I would say that Stack Overflow is almost zero. Like I do Stack Overflow answers. In the beginning, I was doing it as an exercise to learn, and this is something I tell people to do. It's like, go to the Stack Overflow, see a question, and use that question in order for you to learn about different topics in AnyLogic that are completely different of what you do on the daily basis. This is what I did in the beginning. And now I do it just for fun and to relax. It's like I'm working and I want to relax. Let's see a question. Okay, let's answer and then go back to work,
Yeah, it's a nice distraction.
Yeah, but sometimes the questions are really hard, and you need to like make a reproducible thing. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes you don't even know the concept, and because at the end of the day, it's impossible to know all concepts that exist. So you need to always go back and sometimes even learn the basics, remember the basics in order to answer a question that is more complicated.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so many facets of AnyLogic. Like, for example, if there's questions about the fluid library or even some system dynamic stuff, I just glance over them and saying, that's not my specialty. I don't have a lot of experience. But if you really try and answer all of them, you keep yourself, sharp on all the different aspects of AnyLogic. So it really is, like you said, to learn and to keep on testing your knowledge of things that you're not commonly, confronted with every day. So that's really true.
Definitely, it's a win-win situation, because you learn at the same time, you help someone, and at the same time, you help the community, because the answer will be there forever.
Yeah, and the nice thing, I mean, we've mentioned it in the AnyLogic conference as well, is that you get some form of recognition, right? Where if you answer questions on LinkedIn or wherever else, there's no recognition. In the Stack Overflow, you get the reputation and so on. And I mean, I think that counts at least for something. So Felipe, on the AnyLogic conference, you recently presented a very interesting topic about the modeling of social behavior and the power saving. You used Python and AnyLogic. Tell us a bit more about that project.
So I presented 2 projects. I don't know if you noticed that there was a second one that
I watched this one.
Okay, so the reason I presented this is not because the topic is super amazing and the results changed the world. It's because in 2019 in the conference, I participated in watching all of them, and it was like nobody is talking about anything related to machine learning or statistical models used in AnyLogic, and nobody does that. So this was on my mind already. So I wanted to present something that is related to doing that. In the conference of 2021, I also didn't see anything related to it besides the AnyLogic talk about using this pipeline, which is the Python library. So what I did there was with the purpose of showing that it's possible to use a model using machine learning or statistics and use it on runtime to predict the behavior of a system or an individual in a system in order to see what happens based on a on a model that you build out of data. Most of people use simulations to generate data in order to create the machine learning model, which is totally fine. But this is kind of the opposite approach.
Yeah, I want to say there's a lot of, most of the machine learning models, like you said, is some reinforcement learning thing, or you produce the data and then you let the machine learning run on that, or for example, the Pathmind or Bonsai.
I also presented, the other project I presented in the conference was related to reinforcing learning. So you didn't watch it because it was probably, it was actually the last talk on the conference. And
okay, awesome.
There was not so many people left, I think, because my first talk had a lot of engagement, a lot of questions, and the second one was like not so much.
Yeah, well, if it was at the end of the conference, it was probably at my night time, so not a very convenient time. But I mean, the beauty is that all of the presentations, all of the videos, everything is available to watch. So I'll definitely make a point of it. And we'll also have the links for your presentations in the video description. So one thing is in this one, when you watched it, you talked about that it was done for a PhD study. So I was wondering, are you planning on doing your PhD, or is it your PhD, I assume?
No, I'm not doing a PhD. But
so you're helping somebody else get a PhD.
but sometimes I help people that are PhD master level to do some projects related to simulations. That project has many other things involved, and the simulation was a small part of it. But I found it interesting from a teaching standpoint. That's why I show it in there. I did some other projects related to this same topic using models with pipeline, but I am not allowed to show them, so they're kind of secret. That's the problem. Most projects are secret with an NDA, and you can't even show it to the world. So
yeah, that's unfortunate. We also had to jump through hoops to get our presentation approved, and you can't mention anything, and you have to change a lot of the details and the specifics so that the company can't be identified. But that's just the nature of the industry. So any other interesting projects or things on the horizon that you can discuss?
Like I have a project in the horizon, but it's kind of secret. And so I can't actually discuss it at all, in particular because I don't want to jinx it, because it's something quite big and it will take quite a while to do it, and I don't want to say that I will do it and at the end I don't do it, and then it's like, hey, but you said 2 years ago that you did it there in this video. Where is it?
Of course. And
you mentioned something about training courses when we spoke the other day, that you've got, or you're planning to do some, I think, a Java-based training course.
So I'm still doing a course now, which is, and I will release it probably before the end of this year, which is purely based on agent-based with AnyLogic. So that will be out as soon as I can, because it's a lot of work to do these courses. In average, it takes, like, for me at least 12 hours of work to do 1 hour of content, more or less. I don't know what your case was with your Java in AnyLogic project.
Yeah, it's a lot of time, and I tried to do a lot of effort with the editing as well. And then you go through the video and you go like, no, this part is crap. I need to redo this. And then setting up and doing that whole part again takes a while.
Yeah, that's why it takes so long. And that's why we have to recognize all the people who do courses. They spend a lot of time doing it, and I know the effort that it takes. It's quite a lot.
So you've got a number of online courses. Any specific ones that's doing a lot better than the other? I'm assuming the one that you had on, the first one that you did on Udemy is probably the one doing the best. I see you've got a number of others that you do through Teachable. Any specific performers there?
Well, I can tell you that the first course I ever did in 2018, after a company hired me to do a training on the Fluid library. So I did a 2 days training only related to the Fluid library to 22 people in Indonesia. And after that, I said, I can transform this training into a real thing. And I did it, and I posted it, but nobody cares about the Fluid library, or very little people.
Yeah.
It's not that I didn't have sales on that, but it's not really much. Then I did the AnyLogic discrete events and agent-based all together with Java as well. And while I was doing it, I was having this fight in my head. Why am I doing this? Nobody will use this. Nobody will buy it. Nobody will cares. Should I give it for free? Should I sell it? And I had this fight. It took a month for me full time to do it. And I had these fights with my mind all the time. But at the end, it worked pretty well. Like,
yeah.
there's a lot
like
of people,
you said, now even if you don't make a lot of money with the course, people get to see your expertise and maybe contact you 2 years later for a project or for additional training. So in the end, it's worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always worth it because it's always good to have content out there for that purpose. This course is finally my kind of more of a marketing tool than for me, and it helps a lot of people as well. And the System Dynamics course also does very well. There's much more than I expected, so it's pretty good.
Okay.
The other courses I have, they're free, and also, of course, a lot of people take advantage of that because they are free in particular. But I like to have some free courses that I take less time to do them, and that's why I post them for free.
Yeah. So Felipe, when we spoke previously, you mentioned some of the topics that you want to discuss, and I think this one is close to my heart as well, is how do you replicate the real world into simulation? And part of that, what makes simulation modelers different compared to software developers, especially in our way of thinking? So I don't know if you want to touch a bit more on that.
Yeah, so let's talk about that because that's an interesting topic for me, at least. Software developers focus on functionality, and simulation modelers should focus, at least, even though some don't, in replicating and being able to convert real world into a computer simulation. But so, for example, let me give you a super simple example where you have like a bus with passengers, and the passengers leave the bus in a bus stop, and in your simulation, you drop everybody at the same time, which is fine, but if you think about it, that's not what happens in the real world. Even though it's a simplification, it's just an assumption for you that all the passengers are leaving at the same time, when the reality is like one is leaving after the other, right? That's one example. And another one would be like if you see the grain terminal model, which is a typical one that people use to showcase simulation, like the truck is going to deposit the material, and before depositing the material, it stops in the parking spot for 1 millisecond and then continues. So is that happening in real life? No, but the simulation works perfectly fine. So I had this enlightenment some time ago where I understand that what I'm doing is actually replicating the real world as it is. And there are many hacks that we can do in order to make the model work. So this is the paradigm of functionality. And we forget that we should be doing a replication of what happens in real life. This is kind of hard to explain maybe for me, because I haven't explained it before to anyone. But that is the general concept. In particular, I've seen this happening in many models that I've been checking that other people have been doing, where they do hacks, they do kind of little tricks. Sometimes you don't know why the model is working, but it's working, so you forget. But here it's very important to know exactly what's going on and why things are happening, and being able to explain all the assumptions. And I will talk more about this in a webinar I'm going to do with AnyLogic at the end of November. So we're going to do a webinar, and I will talk more about this topic.
Okay, but you made it sound like they need to replicate everything to the T. I think we all know that in models you need to simplify a lot of things. And the question is, those things that you do simplify, what are they?
Yeah, so this is kind of the trade-off, kind of, because you want to simplify, but you want to simplify based on reality. So again, this is kind of difficult to explain for me at this point, and I need to work on my explanation on this topic. But there's a lot of things that modelers do to hack, and this is the point. Like, you hack the model in order to trick yourself and trick others who see your model to believe that it's right. And you trick yourself. You lie to yourself in order to make the model seem like a work, and you forget about this functionality you did that works, but it's not actually replicating reality. And sometimes little things like that can have an impact, and nobody notices, and it's very difficult to notice that someone hacked it. So the results, even though they can be close enough to what you want, there might be something that is relevant that you just put on the side.
Yeah, I think that's where verification, validation, and stress testing the model is of paramount importance. You need to say, okay, well, what if I change this? What if I change it? I'm expecting this outcome, and if I'm not getting it. So if I take the grain terminal example, if you're saying, okay, well, in real life, the vehicle actually has to maneuver, and that takes some time, and then somebody points that out, and you say, okay, well, I'm just going to add 10 seconds of maneuvering time. But if the objective of your model is to change the parking configuration, etc., and you didn't explicitly model this maneuver behavior, what will happen is it'll be 10 seconds regardless of how your layout is of the floor and of the parking, etc. And then you're saying, oh, well, the parking has no impact on my efficiency, where in reality, if you were to model that in the detail required, you would have seen, okay, this parking configuration is now taking 10 seconds maneuvering time to 1 minute. So it's really, and I think that was the key thing for me, is the big difference between a software developer and a simulation modeler is you need to critically think about these things. What level of abstraction is sufficient? Because you can't go and model every butterfly wing and every tornado that gets started in Canvas, right? You need to decide what are the key things, what are the key points that we will want to change, and what are the surrounding aspects that I need to model in detail to simulate the impact correctly. And that's really hard. It's a lot of experience. It's a bit of magic, and most of all for me in the end, it is testing. It's really saying, well, if I change this, look at it critically, don't press the play button. What do you think is going to happen? Why? Okay, now press the play button. Are you seeing that? Are you verifying that? If you're seeing what you're expecting, is it because of the causes that you expected, right? And that's really key. So I'm not sure if this is maybe a separate question, but our software developers think differently than modelers. Something that we've touched on recently in our projects a lot is unit testing and proper architecture design, especially if you start doing multi-threading in models. What would you say is the big difference between software developers and simulation modelers, especially on the testing side?
Yeah, so first, I agree with everything you say. The validation is a significant part of looking at everything that you're actually hacking, but that's something that is true, even though that sometimes it's kind of impossible to see these little tricks. But in terms of I was a software developer in the past. I had a software developing company 10 years ago, and I had a software developer team, people doing software development for me as well, and I was doing as well. And I don't know about unit testing and all that stuff, but there's a different mindset. And I was saying about that, functionality, things work fine, but you're not trying to model anything, right? This modeling part is the fundamental element that doesn't exist for a software developer.
Yeah, true.
But in terms of how you architecture things, generally software developers are much better at that than modelers, for sure.
Yeah. I think there's some key principles in software development that's sort of hard to apply or super time consuming in models, right? In the way that you structure things, and everything, let's say, needs to be private variables and getters and setters, and you can get a lot of away without doing a lot of those things inside your models.
Yeah, so when I was doing software development, I was doing unit testing, but in AnyLogic, I don't do unit testing. With software development, I was doing all the time using Subversion or GitHub to do version control. In AnyLogic, I don't always do it because it doesn't give you all the things that it gave me doing software development. For bigger projects, I use Subversion at least because it gives you a lot of in particular when you're trying to create a functionality that you don't know what's going to happen and you mess everything up and you want to go back. So that's something I do.
Yeah, so about version control, for us, we use GitHub extensively in our projects, but a lot of the times, like on our project portfolio digital twin, we'd have 3 people working on the same model at exactly the same time, and you just make sure that everybody, Scott, I'm touching these agents and these Java classes, and the other guy's doing those, and that nothing overlaps. And at the end of the day, we're like, okay, I've got a pull request, and we review each other's work, and so there's a lot of benefits when you're working in a team of using something like Git, and I'm not sure about the Subversion. And then at the end, you just say, well, here's your work, here's mine. We all worked from the same branch, right? Or we branched off the same main. And then we just merge all our work, okay, run all our unit tests, everything's still working, export the model, and we were all able to work on exactly the same ALP file, 3 people at the same time, which is not something you can do without a tool like Git or Subversion. So for us,
with team projects, definitely you should use Git without a doubt. The project I did for the AnyLogic conference, I worked with Pathmind. We used GitHub as well. So, but in general, I don't do project works because generally I work alone. So the version control features that I need are just the basic ones, not the ones that are for team-based.
Yeah, you literally just, you can use Dropbox as well or Google Drive. You just need like separate versions of where you saved. If you remember, oh, I deleted something and I actually want that piece of code and I don't want to rewrite it. That's about, if you're working on your own, that's the benefit of it.
So in fact, Dropbox has saved me, but I work using Dropbox for all my projects. So, and it has saved me 2 or 3 times when AnyLogic crashed, and there's no commit that is going to save you from this.
Yeah.
And it crashed, and you don't know what happened. So luckily, Dropbox saves all the autosaves from AnyLogic, and it keeps it in history. So you just go back and get the last one, and instead of losing 30 minutes of work or 1 hour of work, you lost 5 minutes of work.
Yeah.
So, or even 0 minutes of work.
Yeah. Just one thing is you can't use Dropbox or Google Drive with GitHub. We've tried it, but somewhere if you make a commit and Google Drive doesn't update, or you've got that Google Drive shared with other people and it messes up and you find out that Git's saying you had so many changes and you're like, I didn't change anything. So that's unfortunate. I'm curious though to see how AnyLogic is going to implement version control in the cloud in AnyLogic 9, and especially even on the desktop version. Are they going to have separate, because that's the biggest headache with Git and any version control system currently, is that AnyLogic has one file, one text file, the ALP file. And if you make a single change, like you move an agent around or you change the location of any piece of animation, it shows like you changed 20 lines of code, and actually you didn't change anything, you just moved one thing. So I'm curious about how they will change that. We will get to see it probably later in next year.
I'm curious too. There will be a big change.
So on that note, what do you think the future holds for, let's say, the AnyLogic platform and AnyLogic 9 and cloud modeling? I think AnyLogic is still the only guys that's got this dedicated cloud where you can run your models, and even in the public space. And also now, according to what I know, the first simulation platform where you can model, or where the editor is browser based as well?
Yeah, so that's a difficult question to answer. It's like predicting what software will prevail.
Yeah.
Like AnyLogic has always been on the rise compared to others, but now Python is kind of rising also in the simulation world, but not enough yet. It's super far. When you see simulation models done in Python, they're extremely basic because they're more difficult to do. They have less functionalities still, but in 5 years, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think
Is
Python
AnyLogic
has the
going?
benefit of the community, right? A lot of people
Yeah.
are contributing publicly to it.
Yeah, that's a big benefit, but who knows if you will have enough contributors to surpass the development of AnyLogic. It's impossible to know, but we have to keep an eye on that, because what happens if that happens?
Yeah, well, now that AnyLogic is opened up, and there's this trial going on at the moment, which you can register for, to do where AnyLogic's scripting language is not Java, but you can choose to have it as Python. I mean, so suddenly they're opening up the doors. And for me, that's always been the biggest benefit of AnyLogic, is this ability to say, do you want to drag and drop? Yes. Do you want to write complex code? Do you want to use external libraries? Do you want to interface with a server like we did in our project now? You go like, oh, how do I make a web server RESTful API request in Java? Okay, great. Here's 2 or 3 libraries. And suddenly your model is now like fully functional with any standard architecture out there. So if they open this up to Python, I think they're going to maybe secure their foothold for the future as well.
Yeah, so yeah, you bring people who know Python, but you still don't have the open source elements, you know? So from from 5 years from now, will AnyLogic functionalities be superior to what Python can offer or not, with their library, with their own particular libraries? That's a question. I don't think other software will come anytime soon, even though there's a lot of simulation software that are coming into the play field. But it's difficult to know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, we can just guess, and then we have to wait and see.
Yeah, we have to wait and see.
So another question about the future before we sign off. So in terms of the AnyLogic community, I know this is a topic that Ben touched on as well, and Stack Overflow, LinkedIn, other platforms. What's sort of your, if you were to have your way, what would be the way that the AnyLogic community, communicate with each other and provides insights, share insights, etc.? What's your feelings on that?
So if someone is interested on this topic, you should watch Benjamin Schumann's talk on the AnyLogic conference about the AnyLogic community, where a lot of ideas were shared. In my opinion, the AnyLogic community is a community in which people want to get help on how to do things. And I don't think people are very interested in having conversations like we're having now. Let's have a conversation about applications of AnyLogic in supply chain, and let's talk about this. It seems that people are not very interested on this. People are more interested in how to solve their particular problem that they have right now, and this is kind of the selfish part of any person who is trying to develop something. So Stack Overflow, I think, will remain the thing that is the best for everybody, because you create a world of knowledge, and it will increase more and more as more people contribute. And in the beginning, it was like years ago, it was only Benjamin Schumann and me contributing and nobody else. Even if at the beginning, it was only Benjamin before me. And now there are more people at least, and there are more questions as well. So
yeah.
But in terms of a community for other purposes, it's difficult to think that something can happen. Like someone opened a Discord channel, but nothing happens there. You could open a Slack thing to have discussions, to find jobs, to find projects, to find people who do projects. But you already have the tools, like you can go to Upwork or Fiverr to find these things. So I can't imagine another situation in which the community can grow together. Like my idea was one day maybe we can do like this retreats where you can join 20 people and go to Bali or to Thailand, and we all join together live together and do AnyLogic developments on our own industries, and then we can share really a lot. Then you can share a lot. But to do that, you need someone to organize it and spend time on that. And I don't know if people will be interested, but now since everybody wants to do work online, working in Bali, which is something I've been doing for years, working in a working space in front of palm trees or in front of the beach, and having free time, like to travel, to do these kind of things. And if it was an AnyLogic community, you would learn so much from that.
Yeah.
So that would be a nice thing to have if someone wants to plan this.
Maybe they should add it on to the AnyLogic conference. So the next conference is in Bali, and then there's like a 3-day retreat afterwards where everybody just sits in a room.
Why do they do it in the US? They should do it in a tropical place with a beach, you know.
Oh, we can go Miami, right? That's good enough already. So Philippe, any advice for future modelers before we end?
Yeah, so if you want to be a freelancer these days and do AnyLogic work, even on the side, besides your normal job, there's a lot more work I see coming. So there's a lot of more activity in these platforms so people need AnyLogic modelers. And it's not always companies, sometimes it's more staff, sometimes it's even a student who wants to have help on his project and requires someone who has a low rate. You can always help in Stack Overflow in order to learn. You should spend a lot of time learning. That's something that is important. You can create your own demo models and upload them in the cloud on the topics of your interest. So, for example, I'm interested in natural selection and evolution. So I've done a project that is related to the topic, and I uploaded to the cloud. It's not public yet because I'm working on it still. But if I have an interest, just develop a model with that interest and upload it. Maybe tell a story about it. There's more and more resources to learn AnyLogic these days, so participate in those resources and maybe create your own resources as well. When I talked with Benjamin Schumann years ago on the podcast, I said, be sure to learn before you start working in AnyLogic models with clients. But I changed my mind. Now I think just do projects, and it doesn't matter, and you will learn while doing them.
Yeah, definitely. It's easier to learn with a little bit of pressure from a client than to sit and to say, okay, I need to now make up a problem that I want to solve.
Yeah.
But that advice that you've given is very similar to what Andrei Malakanov did. Andrei Malakanov gave me years ago when I was just out of university, and I found this guy doing AnyLogic modeling, and he also said, listen, just build models. Like, find a problem. He said, go through some conference papers, see what these guys did, and try and replicate it. And we'll have him on an interview later next week as well, or next month.
Maybe I can share you my screen and show you the first project I ever did.
Yeah, go for it.
Just for fun.
Yeah, of course.
So you can see the level of projects that you can.
But that was back in the day. You were the best online, simulation consultant. So I think the game's changed somewhat.
Do you see my screen or not?
Yes, I do. Products, machines, delays.
So I had this project, which was just 5 machines in line doing something. There's no even an animation. There's nothing, And I did a lot of mistakes here, I created these 3 products
which are all actually the same.
Are actually the same thing. But I made a mistake. This mistake doesn't matter in a small model like this. It will matter when you do bigger models, because you can't have these kind of architectures. In this case, I have the three sources. If I was to do it again, I would just do one source that acts as a population of sources. You know, instead of maybe even one machine, I would just do one block and make a loop. I don't know. Like, this could be done in so many ways, and the architecture that I have is so bad, you know. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it's such a small thing. But
and for example, those blocks that you've got there, right? So you've got 5 times 3, so you've got 15 blocks there. When I built my first model for my final year project, I had like hundreds of these edit boxes, like hundreds. And then I would need to make a UI change. And I would literally sit and say, for the next 3 hours, I'm going to move and space these blocks. Right now, with replicated shapes, you just go,
you can just go here, go to replication, and you do the work one time. Why do I have to do it 15 of those? It doesn't matter. I wouldn't do it now. So, but when you don't know, you don't do it. So when you do,
my big question is, how do you know these things? Unless you ask support, maybe saying, I think this is wrong, or maybe you ask another question. But if you didn't know about this replication and how it worked, right, you wouldn't know about it. And nobody would tell you about it. And these are a lot of the sort of hidden gems inside AnyLogic, which I hope to bring out in a lot of the blog posts and so on. But it's one of these things you don't know, and you've got no reason to ask. So you would struggle along for years before you fix it.
Yeah, so that's a good thing that you're saying there, because how do you know what you don't know?
Yeah.
And
one
general,
other thing is working in teams, right? So, working with Vitor and with Benjamin at Goldratt Research Labs, you learn such a lot of things because they've got different experiences. They do things in different ways. They tried this, or they emailed support, and support says, no, this was what you would do. So you get to share a lot of knowledge and really increase your expertise and skills.
Yeah. So first, working with others is a big difference. Having a mentor is a big difference, but you cannot always have that. Most of the people who work in AnyLogic related projects are on their own. In particular, when you're a student, you are on your own. There's no one to teach you. Your supervisor doesn't know AnyLogic.
Yeah.
So what do? You can only try, fail, try. But something that is very useful is to just go through the AnyLogic examples. Just see what they do there. And I've learned most of the advanced stuff watching the examples that exist in AnyLogic, because in general they are architectured in a very smart way.
Yeah. And the big book of AnyLogic, I don't know if you've gone through that one as well. I've learned a lot in that when I did it, years ago when they just started writing it.
Yeah, so I think I read that book in 2013 when I did my first project. But I don't know, I don't remember how much it helped me. But I also did the AnyLogic in 3 days course, but using the book, not going to the proper training. But after I did the 3 days training, I said, okay, let's do the model. And I didn't know what to do. I was lost anyways. So there's something that is very important to become a really good developer of AnyLogic, is being able to cross the wall of frustration. So when you start doing something and you say, hey, I don't know how to do it. I really don't know how to do it. It's like, it doesn't matter. You need to keep trying. It doesn't matter if it takes a week to try to solve the same exact simple problem that maybe it would take you 10 minutes to do. But you need to try until you figure it out. And that's how you learn. By suffering, you learn. No pain, no gain, in a way.
Indeed. Is that persistence pays off, right? I see you've got some nice sayings there at the back, and I'm assuming that one there on my left is saying never give up.
Yeah, so there is like, get shit done, and think outside the box.
And never give up. Well done. Felipe, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for your time, your insights, and sharing your journey, a bit about freelancing, learning AnyLogic, and your future and current projects. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure to talk to you as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'd again like to thank Felipe for his time. Again, the full interview is available in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. If you like these videos, you're welcome to subscribe and you'll get notified of new videos. Else go and check out our complete blog on theanylogicmodeler.com. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.